Hello and welcome to Movers and Shakers virtual event. My name is Simon Montgomery and I am the Regional Director for Movers and Shakers. For those of you who are new to Movers and Shakers, we are the leading property networking forum in the UK. Indeed, this is our 25th year anniversary of delivering events, bringing together key players from both the private and public sector. On to today. This lunchtime session is titled Young Brainees Quiz, and I'm delighted to introduce Ged Couser, who is the Architect Principal at BDP. Ged will be interviewed, stroked quiz, by John, Melanie and Mohamed, who are all Brainees. And Regeneration Brainery are a not-for-profit organisation that brings young people closer to and connecting them with the property and construction industry. Regeneration Brainery recognises that our industry needs new people, new skill sets and talents. Regeneration Brainery understands that organisations and businesses want to be diverse, but aren't speaking to young people enough, or to their parents, teachers or careers advisors. In short, their main influencers. To highlight the huge variety and opportunity that our marketplace offers these individuals. Regeneration Brainery is making these connections happen. This summer, the Brainees have been interviewing some of the UK's leading figures in the built environment as part of their Our Futures programme of events. Movers and Shakers have been supporting Regeneration Brainery by hosting all of these events, and obviously including today's. Last week we had Louise Wyman from Manchester City Council, and previously we had Nick Walkley from Homes England. So, on to today. I hope you all enjoy today. Ged, I hope you enjoy today. And I would like to welcome John, Melanie and Mohamed to ask their questions. So, without further ado, I would like to ask Mohamed to ask the first question. Mohamed, over to you.
My name is Mohamed. I'm Brainee with Regeneration Brainery. I'm just starting my A-level and then I'm interested to get into property development. Regeneration Brainery inspires young people to work in property and construction by connecting us with young mentors who talk about what it's really like. I would like to welcome everybody today to talk about our future.
Hi Ged, my name is Melanie and I am 19 years old and about to start an architecture course at Reading University. At the moment, my friends and I are worried about our futures because of coronavirus stopping our exams, because of unemployment, and we are worried about finding placements.
Hi, my name is John. I'm about to start my A-levels and I'd like to go into architecture. Today, Melanie, Mohamed and I will be interviewing Ged Couser from Architecture Practice, BDP. Hi, Ged.
Hi, John. Hi, Mohamed. Hi, Melanie. It's really great to meet you all. Looking forward to being quizzed today. It's great to see you.
So, Ged, what is it that you do?
It's a good question to start with. I'm an architect principal at BDP, so I sit on the main board. It's quite an interesting place to be because we've got about 1,200 people that work with us. We've got 16 studios, 9 in the UK, 7 international studios in really interesting places like Toronto, Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, and we do some fantastic work across all disciplines. I look after the architect profession in Manchester, so we've got about 70 architects there. Mostly I've recruited, and we do some fantastic award-winning work. But my main sort of task is winning, designing and delivering large, complex projects, mainly in the healthcare sector. Projects like Old Age Children's Hospital, Clatterbridge Cancer Centre, and my current project I'm working on at the minute is for a new research laboratory at the Christie Hospital called the Christie Patterson Building. The client's looking for it to be in the top 5 research centres in the world, so it's a really, really exciting project.
Right, okay. What steps did you take to become an architect, and what went right and what went wrong through that process?
Well, I went to St George's High School in Walkden, comprehensive school, did okay in my O-levels, went to De La Salle Sixth Form College to do A-levels. and didn't do that well actually, and didn't get my sort of my first place choice. I ended up going to Leicester Polytechnic through clearing, but found my sort of passion in architecture. There's a guy they call Richard Patterson, who's an American researcher and an architect. And he took a group of us kind of under his wing, and we really kind of enjoyed our 3 years there. And he encouraged us all to go and study elsewhere and outside of Leicester. One guy went to the AA, one guy went to the Bartlett, I went to Cambridge University, and it was a fantastic 2 years to do my diploma. I came back to Manchester, worked for Stephen Hodder for a bit, did Cohen Swimming Pool, which was really quite an amazing project, award-winning. Worked for Nicholas Grimshaw for a bit at the airport, and then came to BDP. And my first project was the Manchester Marks and Spencer project, which is an amazing project following the IRA bomb that really started to regenerate, and that master plan started to regenerate the city. That was about 20 years ago, and my career has been with BDP since, and I've worked on some amazing projects with some amazing people in a great city.
It sounds like it's been a long time process, kind of. And from today's day and age, to qualify is 7 years usually. Is there any other quicker way?
There isn't a quicker way, but now what's emerging is that there are smarter ways. Things like apprenticeships are now being introduced into architecture at both level 6 undergraduate level and level 7 postgraduate level, which means that people can spend time working and earning as they learn. There's also collaborative courses which are thinner sliced as you get through the qualification process, which means that you can kind of earn money as you get qualified. And I think the general sort of timeline has gone from 7 to 8 years in that process, but that incorporates the part 3, the professional exam. So I think it's much easier and a much more comfortable sort of process to go through, rather than the prospect of sort of 5 years of full-time study. When I qualified, we had grants to study. We didn't have any fees to pay. It was a different kind of time. And we BDP are embracing this new approach to people getting qualified in architecture. So we were one of the gateway sort of practices that were involved in that process. And we're going to embrace both the level 6 and the level 7 apprenticeship program.
Okay. So what's like with this program that you guys are starting, and you as yourself experienced in architect and 20 years, what skills do you look for in an architect?
I think it's really important that an architect can draw. I think that's the sort of cornerstone of any sort of good architect. Needs to be able to communicate ideas at a variety of different levels. And whether that's sort of sketching sort of notes in a book and communicating that in meetings, or getting into the sort of digital sort of side of communicating ideas. I think drawing is absolutely fundamental to any successful kind of architectural career. That's how we communicate our ideas and our kind of passions. But you also need to be able to sort of put buildings together. You need to be able to problem solve. You need to be ingenious, intuitive, and really inquisitive. Architecture, quite a lot of architecture is about problem solving. So you really need to have that sort of that skill. But communication is also key. Presenting ideas, presenting to clients, presenting to end users is a really important skill to have. And also working in a team. That's key to success in the industry. Collaboration is becoming increasingly important, I think, across all the disciplines, across all the professions.
Okay, you kind of just talked about, like, as individuals, the factors they do need to have and skills. as a class, you talked about how, class is very important in the architectural profession. What are you doing to change this?
I think it's really important to make sure that the architect profession reflects sort of society, and I think there is a debate going on about whether the architect profession is kind of is becoming elitist, which is something that we absolutely definitely need to confront. It's really important that we get an ethnically diverse profession. It's really important that we have a male sort of female sort of equality and a good kind of mix. But it's also important that we encourage people from a whole range of different social backgrounds to get involved in the profession. My dad worked in a foundry. I'm definitely from a kind of a working class background. So we encourage. We have a. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but we have a schools program, work experience program. And we get at least 20 children, 20 kids, 20 college students through our architect profession group in any one year. And I make sure that there's a really proper, diverse mix of students that come into that process. Regeneration Brainery is doing an amazing job, and we're really happy to take people from that group, from your group, and into our program. And it's quite an interesting program in that you basically are in the office for a week. You get to choose a site, you do the site analysis, we teach you some software, and then you design a pavilion that relates to your hobby, your interest. And then you design that for the next sort of 2 or 3 days. And then you present your solution back to the team in which you're working in. And then you walk away after a week with a really good sort of piece of work that's can contribute to your portfolio. So we really encourage sort of getting as many people through our work experience program as possible, and that goes across all the professions, not just architecture.
Our teachers say we need maths, geography, and art to become an architecture. How much do we actually need them?
Well, I think the right balance is to have a science and an arts and humanities sort of mix. As I said, I did maths, physics, and art, which was a pretty good balance. Arts a really strong subject to take and to have sort of in your curriculum. There's 2 reasons for that. One is that it's a really, as I've already said, it's really important that you can draw. That's a really important skill to have. But also you'll find that when you go for interviews to try and get a place at architecture school, they'll ask to see a portfolio. And if you've got an art A-level portfolio, that's a really good sort of tool to get through that process. But I don't think there is necessarily a kind of a perfect mix of subjects to take. You clearly need to be fairly academically successful to get a place on a course nowadays. It's a very competitive sort of student market. So I'd encourage you to take subjects that you enjoy, that you're kind of good at. But drawing, whether you take art or not, is a really important skill that you must develop.
Okay. What have you been doing during lockdown?
Lockdown was pretty interesting for me because I was in lockdown for a week and then was asked to do the Nightingale Northwest Hospital at GMX. Didn't know anything about the job. Got the call on the Saturday after being in lockdown for the week. Went to GMX on the Sunday. And then got given the brief along with the project manager and Vinci, the HP, the contractor, that we had to deliver a 750-bed hospital in 13 days. So I spent my kind of second and third week of lockdown at the GMX for 15, 16 hours a day, along with 1,000 other people, which wasn't really being in lockdown. But the project went really well. It was an incredible sort of process project to be involved with. And following that, since lockdown, pretty much the whole of BDP is working at home and doing that really very successfully. And we're meeting clients, we're working on projects, we're having team meetings, So, it kind of so far so good, but, architecture and design and construction is a collaborative, cooperative process, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into the office and pinning drawings up on walls and getting big fat pens and having sort of team meetings, swapping ideas and being creative again.
We know that you worked with the army. How has that changed the way you've worked?
The army were there on that first day, and there was a guy called Major Matt Fry, who runs the sort of special assessment units, and it's quite part of the Royal Engineers. And he was absolutely incredible, and they didn't provide necessarily sort of practical, technical advice. They were more sort of mentors to the client and to the designers and to the contractors, and they talked about not concentrating on too much of the detail, to really think about the big picture, organising them, ourselves to get decisions made in the right order and the decisions made very kind of in a logical kind of way to get the thing done quickly. And Major Matt Fry had this saying, and he would walk around the site saying, "Don't worry about the fine detail, pull the big levers," which I think is a really kind of it's a phrase that will kind of live with me as working on other projects and as my career develops.
Do you think it's better to have the same people working on the same job or different people every time?
I think architecture is such an interesting and sort of varied sort of career. And construction generally, building buildings are generally prototypes. You only kind of build, building once. There are some typologies that do repeat, but mostly architecture is about prototyping. And I think architecture is interesting in that regard because you're kind of doing the thing for the first time. But in our Manchester studio, we are kind of sector based, so we have sector teams. So the idea is that the healthcare team gets kind of expert in healthcare, the historic environments team gets expert in historic environments, and so on. But what we find is that young sort of graduates that come in newly and kind of nearly qualified people are much more flexible and kind of and go between the sectors, so they have an experience of working on different building typologies. But as your career kind of matures and as you become more experienced, what we find is, and as you gain more seniority, you become more fixed in that sort of building typology and become more of an expert. So we've got 6 or 7 sort of sector groups in Manchester, and leading them, we've got proper sector profession directors that are really expert in that field. But then we have teams that kind of sit sort of with them, that do sort of flex between the building types. And as your career develops, I think that's the approach that you need to take, so that you have as wide an experience as your career is starting as possible.
Last week you talked to Regeneration Brainery and talked about people working too much in silos. We don't want to inherit these problems, so we had to think about what could help. We think architects should be more involved in the construction phase, and construction workers should be more involved in the planning phase. We also think there should be more regular full project meetings and lots of networking across the industry. What do you think about it?
That's really perceptive, and that's it hits the nail on the head. Design is absolutely a collaborative process, but there is a tendency for some projects to have a silo kind of mentality. If there's a problem on a project, it becomes a profession problem rather than a project problem. And I think that is something that I sort of touched upon in my sort of discussion with you sort of last week. The Nightingale project was absolutely an incredible thing, but to get through it so quickly, any problem on the project became everybody's problem. It was a shared approach to problem solving and to creation of this thing. And I think that needs to happen more across the design industry. collaboration, I think, even between practices, is becoming more usual, and I think should be encouraged.
Would you like to have a meeting about this with us next week?
I think that would be a really good idea. And using this kind of forum, we could get kind of a lot of people involved. We can get some of our new guys, Nikesh, Nisa, Radu, Ileana, to kind of join with us. They could share their experience of their career sort of path so far, and what it's like to work at BDP, which I think you might find interesting. And then we could really kind of workshop sort of ideas about your thoughts about where you think the industry needs to be going.
Mm-hmm.
So I welcome that, and we'll get that organised. That'll be a good thing to do.
Okay. The Brainery introduces us to mentors. Have you ever had a mentor?
I've had mentors all the way through my career. Richard Patterson at Leicester. I had an amazing tutor at Cambridge called Dean Hawkes. I was first recruited in BDP by a guy called David Barnes, who was, he was kind of legendary, amazing sort of architect, really kind of very driven, really good at kind of managing people. And he kind of took a group of us on at that sort of stage, and that group has, again, their careers have matured and are now sort of running the practice. So mentorship is really important, and it's something that we take seriously at BDP. So we've got a mentor program that we just started last year, and it was piloted between London and Manchester, and it was done really very sort of properly. So the mentors were trained to be mentors, which I think was a fantastic thing. And I would encourage you to seek out kind of a mentor. And do that at every sort of step of your career as you move forward.
How do we apply to the mentoring program at BDP?
Well, the mentoring program at BDP is sort of internal, so it's for our kind of staff, and the idea is to develop kind of career paths for people and give people the tools to make decisions. Which is what kind of mentorship is all about. So we don't have sort of external sort of people coming in to take part, but I'm sure that there would be people and individuals within our profession and within the BDP Manchester studio who would be interested in talking to you about becoming, a kind of a mentor for them. And I'd suggest that it would be somebody kind of from the kind of younger generation who have a more closely sort of aligned sort of timeline in terms of the pressures that you're kind of going through and going under.
Do you have placements for school or university students at BDP, and how do we apply? So
the school program I've already kind of talked a little bit about. All you do is send our HR department an email, and we have a program for the year. We normally start off kind of aiming to get about a dozen students in. It always blossoms, it always grows. We always end up with about 20. But I'd suggest that the Brainees sort of apply to be part of that, and can email me directly, and I'll send that contact detail through. We also pretty much every year take on part 1 and part 2 students. We haven't this year, but the aim is that instead of taking on part 1 and part 2s, we're going to start taking on apprentices in the new year, once the universities sort of get their organisation together to facilitate that.
How can young people like me network with people in the industry like you?
Well, you're doing a pretty good job at the minute, and the Regeneration Brainery is a fantastic sort of organisation. You've quizzed some amazing people over the past kind of week or so. But there are organisations like, I'm on the committee of the FBE, which is the Forum for the Built Environment. Now they have a thing called the FFT, which is it's called Forum for Tomorrow, and it is for 18 to 13-year-olds. 18 to 30-year-olds, so it's the younger generation. But they have really direct links into the FBE, which is the senior sort of organisation that it sits underneath. There's also I think there's an ROBA Young People Forum, which again you can get involved with. That's for people from age 16 to 24. There's also organisations like the Construction Youth Trust. You know, there's a lot of sort of junior organisations that I would encourage you to do some research on and get involved with. And again, I can give you all of the sort of contact details that you need to do that.
Okay, thank you. As an employer, when looking at our CVs, will you remember that the government and COVID-19 impacted on our future?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's a really difficult time at the minute. It's kind of unprecedented. Nobody really knows kind of, you know, how this lockdown will finish and when it will finish. So, you know, you have my sort of, you know, sympathy, you know, kind of, you know, going into your, you know, the beginning of your career path at this kind of difficult time. But it will pass. You know, it will, you know, the business kind of community will recover from it. You know, there's been, you know, a number of recessions that I've seen us kind of grow out of and design out of. So I would really sort of encourage you to stay optimistic. You know, it will get better. Things will improve. And, you know, I think, you know, it's really good news that the A-level sort of fiasco has been sorted out. Because even that was, you know, quite a difficult thing for you guys at your kind of level and at your generation to go through. And I'm really absolutely delighted that's been resolved. But the thing I'd encourage you to do is that at BDP we have, you know, we're really keen to give as much assistance to young people as possible to gain experience, to get careers, to get placements at university. So we have things like a CV workshop. So, you know, I'll host a workshop where we get all of our kind of work experience people in. We can teach them about what a CV needs to look like, what it needs to contain, because, you know, architecture and design CVs are very different to normal CVs. They kind of need to be beautifully kind of graphic, and we can give you advice and really kind of teach you how to put that together properly and in a really creative way. We also have portfolio workshops where we sort of, you know, critique portfolios and again to make them look as best as they absolutely can, so that work is shown to the kind of best advantage. You know, BDP is all about sort of people. You know, we design places for people, and we're really keen to give as many kind of sort of, you know, as much assistance, as many leg ups as possible to you young guys as you start your career and develop your ambitions.
Ged, on behalf of Regeneration Brainery, we want to thank you for spending your lunchtime with us.
We are sharing this information on social media and the Regeneration Brainery website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mohamed. Some really interesting questions. Hope I've kind of answered them satisfactorily. If not, let me know and we can continue the conversation. It'd be great to arrange that meeting with you and our young guys in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Ged. Thank you, John. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Mohamed. I'll come back to you guys in a second. But some really, really interesting information there. And thanks for being so open and honest there, Ged. And obviously, I mean, one of the things that comes out of that, you know, Jed's obviously a great mentor. He's not going to agree with me now, but obviously, in terms of it's really, really important when you get in contact with somebody like Ged, who's so well connected and so well respected within the industry, and with those very, very kind offers of introduction, come into the office, look at portfolios, look at CVs, and advice like that. It's so important to take people like Jed's offer up. His time's very important. He probably won't hand it out too freely, but when you do get that opportunity, I would recommend that you take it with both hands. And obviously, your organisation, Jed's got a lot of great things going on for people coming into the marketplace, and it's fantastic that you're working in tandem with Regeneration Brainery to make these things happen. And you can see that the greater good that what Regeneration Brainery is trying and is indeed creating for the future of our marketplace. Really interested to hear and giggled when you said, when asked about a question about what do you need academically to become an architect? Was it like you guys, like Ged obviously is? I was really keen on being an architect. The conversation didn't last very long with my careers advisor. He said, Simon, can you draw? So unfortunately, that kind of ruled on, and we turned the page and moved on to the next one. But I can see the attraction, and some things in life, and as with technology, things move on. Some things don't, and it made me laugh. At 30 years later, that advice is still going strong. So in a way, it's quite reassuring to know that not everything changes at such pace as it seems to at some points. But going on, but thank you very much, guys. John, Melanie and Mohamed, more particularly, well done, guys. Really good job. Some super questions there, really well delivered. Super flow to the conversation, and I'm sure, Ged probably found that relatively easy in a bigger scheme of things. And I would suggest that's down to you guys and your delivery and the quality of your questions. So yeah, congratulations for conducting such a successful event. Today's event will be available to view again on YouTube. So if you want to watch it again, go onto our YouTube channel, hit subscribe and watch the channel, or indeed, if there's someone who may find the session of value, please forward it on to them. The Brainees on today's session, of their details you can find on the Moves and Shakers website, but they are also on LinkedIn. So please feel free to link in with those guys on the session today. And indeed, if you want to find out about more about Regeneration Brainery, they obviously have a website. So please go onto that website, and that will obviously give you a bit more information about Regeneration Brainery and see how it can potentially help you. Our next session is we've got a couple of week break now, so it's the 2nd of September, and the title is Dynamic Asset Management in a Post-COVID-19 World. Again, this is a virtual event. It is free. The time is 12:30 to 1:30, the 2nd of September. And briefly on that panel is Richard Gerritsen, who is a Regional Director for Continental Europe for Yardi, Anne Breen, who's a Global Head of Investment Process and Strategy for Aberdeen Standard Investments, Adam Pearce, who's a Managing Director for Kintyre. And this is the first of a number of sessions in association with the Yardi Group. Thank you once again for joining us today. I hope you had a valuable session. I really enjoyed that. I think everyone involved did. Congratulations to all involved again. So from Moves and Shakers, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week. Please stay safe and have a fabulous rest of Wednesday. Many thanks. Bye-bye.